When the bank doors opened with a heavy creak, everyone thought it was just another day. Employees tired from the morning traffic, customers waiting for their next transaction. But when Ethan walked in, he made a striking difference. He was wearing a worn sweatshirt, and his face had a seriousness that belied his young age. But what really stood out was the big old bag in his hand. He placed it on the counter and took a deep breath. "I want to open a bank account," he said in a calm voice. Lily, the bank teller, thought it was a joke at first. "Sure, how much do you want to deposit into your account?" she asked with a smile. Ethan slowly unzipped the bag. Lily's eyes widened. The bag was filled from top to bottom with money. Hundreds of bills were neatly lined up. "Is that enough?" Ethan asked, his face expressionless. The buzzing in the bank suddenly stopped. Everyone around them was eavesdropping. Lily stood up, not knowing what to say. "Are you sure this is real?" Ethan squinted at Lily. "You can check the money," he said. "It's real." At that moment, whispers began among the bank employees. Some were talking about calling the police. Others were trying to figure out how the boy had so much money. Ethan waited in silence, a look of unwavering determination on his face. Lily finally broke down and asked, "Where did you get all that money?" Ethan lowered his eyes slightly and took a deep breath. "It doesn't matter," he said. "I just want to open an account." But everyone understood that this story would not end with just opening a bank account. The secret Ethan was keeping was the beginning of something much bigger. The silence in the bank soon gave way to chaos. When it was confirmed that the money Ethan had brought was real, the seriousness of the situation shook everyone. Lily reported the situation to the bank manager. The manager invited Ethan into the meeting room, and Ethan took his briefcase and quietly went into the room. The manager, an older man, was surprised at the mismatch between Ethan's young age and the large sum of money in his bag. "Look, son," he said, clasping his hands together on the desk. "In order to deposit this much money into a bank account, you need a source. Where did it come from?" Ethan lowered his eyes to the floor. "It was my father's money," he finally said. "It was a trust he wanted to leave to his family." The principal frowned. "So why did you bring this money out now?" Ethan paused, then continued. "When my parents died in an accident, I found a safe in an old closet in our house, and this money came out. I was little at the time. I didn't know what to do with it. I kept it for years, but I've had enough. I want to put this money to good use." As the manager analyzed Ethan's words, he noticed the determination in his eyes. Nevertheless, for someone of Ethan's age, this was highly suspicious. The manager said that as a matter of procedure, he had to report the incident to the police. Ethan took this news coldly. "No problem," he said. "I have nothing to say." After a while, 2 police officers came to the bank. They questioned Ethan and asked him once more about the source of the money. Ethan repeated the story he had told the manager earlier. But the police officers moved to verify Ethan's story. They began to investigate his family and background. The policemen listened to Ethan's story and asked each other questions with their glances. There was nothing strange about Ethan's posture, but it was very unusual for a child to come to the bank with so much money. In order to verify what Ethan was saying, a detailed investigation into his family history was launched. Ethan continued to answer the police's questions calmly. "I didn't do anything wrong," he said. "My father left this money for me to use one day." But deep down, he was uncomfortable with having attracted so much attention. Meanwhile, inside the bank, word of the incident had spread, and whispers began among customers and employees. "A kid came in with $1 million, one said. "How is that possible?" Another customer commented. "Maybe this is the work of a major criminal organization." The longer Ethan waited, the more anxious he became. When one of the police officers said, "We may have to take you to the police station," Ethan's heart began to race. "Wait a minute," the principal intervened. "What the boy is saying makes sense. Let's give him a little more time." Ethan was relieved by the principal's support, but all was not over. After a while, one of the police officers revealed some information about Ethan's family. They learned that his father had once owned a small business and had suddenly quit his job. Even more interesting was the information that Ethan's father had disappeared for a while before his death, and upon his return, he had continued with his family as if nothing had happened. These details made the case even more complicated. The police decided to investigate further to confirm whether the money belonged to his father. In the meantime, Ethan chose to stay in the meeting room of the bank instead of going to the police station. The manager brought Ethan a hot cup of tea and let him know he was there for him. "Everything will be fine," he said. But as the hours passed, the crowd outside the bank began to grow. Journalists were outside the bank with their cameras, trying to get Ethan's story. Ethan looked out the window and noticed the attention of people and cameras. "What have I done?" he muttered. Just then, a message arrived on Ethan's phone. It was from an unknown number. "Did your father ever tell you what he kept this money for?" it said. As Ethan read the message, he gripped the phone tightly in his hand. It had been sent by someone he didn't know, and now things were getting even more complicated. He was too agitated to ignore the message. Who had sent this message? And why now? Ethan was determined to unravel the mystery behind the money while searching for answers to these questions. But the truth would change his life forever. While the police were conducting a detailed investigation into Ethan's family and the history of the money, an unexpected development occurred. Two men came into the bank and gave Ethan threatening looks, claiming that the money belonged to them. They were involved in a dispute from a business partnership Ethan's family had worked in the past, and were trying to cover up the true source of the money. The police found their behavior suspicious and deepened their investigation. It turned out that Ethan's father had been forced to hide money from a large business deal at the time, but these people were trying to get their hands on it illegally. The surveillance footage and Ethan's story provided enough evidence for the police to arrest them. By the time the tension at the bank was over, Ethan had earned the trust of not only the police, but also the bank and those around him. After the court process, it was confirmed that the money belonged to Ethan's family. This decision changed Ethan's life forever, but Ethan was still the honest and humble young man he had always been, even when faced with great wealth. "My father had saved this money for our future," Ethan said with tears in his eyes, "but I want to give some of it to people who really need it." Ethan donated most of the money to charity. He set up a fund to support children's education and set aside enough for his own university education. Lily, the manager at the bank, offered Ethan a long-term mentorship to help him with his financial decisions. After this life-changing experience, Ethan saw his family's legacy not only as wealth, but also as a responsibility. He now had a fortune, but more importantly, he was a young person who upheld his values and tried to do something for society. If you liked the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more.